Hello everyone, I'm Justice Graves and I'm currently running to be a member of the Narragansett Regional School Committee here in Templeton, Massachusetts, and today's video is going to be called a quick review of some of the different meetings that are a part of the school committee meetings that we have had currently thus far. I'm starting with the one starting in February and moving forward, and hopefully that these videos starting from this one forward will create a playlist or a timeline of different things that I agree with as I see them and as I go through them, with what I agree with the budget, what I agree with what is going on in the school committee. If there are things that I cannot fully opine on within the confines of trying to make these videos within 10 to 15 minutes, and it deserves its own 10 to 15 minute discussion in terms of an entire item, I will have a separate video about that, about any specific items, of which I've already seen some things that I may have to have separate complete videos for in order to discuss my opinions and to discuss my own policy choices on those, and so that will come out. This video is going to be for the February 1st meeting, to cover the February 17th meeting, and to cover the public budget hearing meeting that happened on February 25th. And that is it. This is all basically accumulating with, I'm going to talk a lot about the budget, I'm going to talk a lot about different items in the budget. I'm not going to talk about what happened at the official vote that happened in March. However, we will get to that in another video if there's anything worthwhile to note that was different that was discussed there. I want to go over some terms just so that the general public is aware, because these acronyms may seem very confusing. There's another acronym too that I will mention as I go through what its meaning is. But for example, the acronym MLC means minimum local contributions. I'm sure you've heard that several times because of the emergency meetings and overrides that have happened with regards to the budget over the past several years. MLCs come from Chapter 70 by state law, and these are basically calculated minimum contributions, meaning the minimum amount that your town has to pay into the school district. That's determined by the state. There's also this item called excess and deficiency fund that comes and is calculated out of Chapter 71. There's also this term called ESSER, Elementary and Secondary Education Emergency Relief, which is essentially code for COVID relief. CRRSA, which is the official Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act that was passed from out of the governor's mansion on December 27th of 2020, which essentially flows from it. ESSER 2, which is essentially emergency relief coming from the major wave of coronavirus relief from the federal government that was then reallocated by the states. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this section when it comes to what is ESSER 2 and what can you use ESSER 2 for, because we did get a grant for it, and this will actually be important for the discussion of what's important to the budget. The link to this, which is called the initial guidance on ESSER 2, is going to be in the description for this video down below, so you can look at this and read the entire document if you wish. But with the highlighted section, what I just want to point out is that you can use up to 75% of the total award monies from ESSER 2 in order to pay for increases in your MLCs. Our MLCs went up this year. A lot of things went up this year, and we're going to talk about how while these things went up, other things went up a lot more. MLCs for the town of Templeton went up almost 140,000. Phillipston went up almost 50,000. So, knowing that, these monies can actually be used to fully pay those increases off, because it does not equal over 75% of the total grant monies awarded. We were awarded $551,000, and we can use up to 75% of it to subsidize for MLCs. This is a one-time parachute. I'm calling it a parachute because essentially it's helping us soften the landing as we come down to normalcy, and when we get to normal budget season wins, and when we get to normal transportation costs, normal costs of having everybody back in time, full-time in school and everything. But the situation is that when it comes to these ESSER 2 grants is that they're one-time, they're parachuting, and you can't really control what you parachute into. And so as we come down for this landing, while everyone from the state to the towns are sort of agreeing that the state, towns, and the local, school districts are agreeing that fiscal year 2022 is probably going to be completely all set, because there's other grants and stuff that are going up every day as these awards sort of matriculate through. There was another grant that we got that actually helped us pay for new middle school textbooks The problem is that these are one-time parachutes, so you can only use them once. They're only good for one time. They have, of course, restrictions. You have to use them within a certain time limit, and so you can only pay for things that will last you an extremely long time, that you can actually have enough money for, or that are one-time purchases that make sense. For example, textbooks, because otherwise you can't buy like a bunch of laptops, because then in 5 years you have to buy more of them, unless you have like extremely really good maintenance, which most people don't. And again, most technology outdates itself within 5 to 6 years. If you do it well, 5 to 6 years. Normally school districts need to recycle every 3 to 4 years, so that's something to sort of keep in mind. A lot of people are concerned about this. The entire committee is concerned about the MLC increases. However, that is not something that we can sort of do. We were awarded, because we were held harmless, more than $30,000 of more funding, because more funding was given per student in the district. But we have a very small district, so that doesn't really amount to much. And this year we had a shortfall of about 180, and I might actually pull that up in just a minute, of 188, of approximately over 188,000. But that shortfall is sort of covered by the fact that we have all of these funds. And so what I want to bring up is the issue of where are the other increases in the budget coming from that are causing, even with the ESSER 2 funds, covering even with the MLC increases, which means that the towns have to pay for that particular amounts. What other things are increasing? One of the other things that are increasing is special education. I want to sort of point this out, that when it comes to the question of special education, the question is not, are we going to fund the students? Legally, we must, because at the state level, the philosophical and ethical questions behind do you fund special education students has been fully answered. This shouldn't necessarily be a debate, but it's always a point of contention and something that people sort of dance around. That ethical and philosophical question has been answered. We must pay what we must pay for what we give the students. So, for example, one of the issues in special education that's going to cause more of a burden in the classroom, even with regards to the smaller class sizes, is that we have more students on IEPs that are in the district. IEP stands for Individual Educational Programs. Not all students that are in special education, not every student that is in special education has an IEP. And there are also students in the regular population that also have IEPs. These students, they have different learning disabilities, they have different other things, but they are allowed to be with the general population. They function with the general population. It is generally considered better for them to be in the general population. And that is that is a privacy, situation when it comes to who does and who does not have an IEP, but just be aware that there are more students in the classrooms at any given time that may have an IEP. So that is the current situation. But the other situation happening is that special education costs have gone up. And Mrs. Matson actually brings a great question onto this, is why are we not doing anything about it? Why are we not investigating this more? And the reason for that, and she brings this up at the public budget hearing, and the sort of situation on this is that it's a two-pronged issue. There is no regulation when it comes to special education. When we contract out different things for special education, there is no regulatory agency that sort of caps, okay, you can't overcharge for this. So we don't know what we're getting charged for specifically. That's causing necessarily a 20% increase in special education transportation. We know a lot of that increase for the past year probably comes from the necessity to do more cleaning because of COVID. But we are also being told that we shouldn't expect these to go down even when we return to normalcy. And so that's bringing up a lot of questions. There's also this increase in out-of-district placement tuitions. This is really just sort of a magic situation, just sort of an out-of-the-blue situation that happens sometimes. Not sometimes, but sort of across the district when it comes to students that are in out-of-district placement tuitions. One person that came into the district that had moved into the district this year cost the district about $250,000 in this particular category, and that's not something you can necessarily control, and this is not something you can necessarily do a full sort of evaluation on, but this is something that can really be sort of openly discussed, because not only is it an issue with regulation, it's an issue at the state level, because there are also generally accepted issues within most of the different regional school districts here that the allocation for special education funds is not, it's sort of in a, not to necessarily borrow Dr. Cosafant's words, but I will for this particular purpose, it's sort of archaic, it's sort of an out-of-date way of allocating those funds, and it's not enough to necessarily offset costs or to help with costs like this. It hasn't been helping over the past several years, and it's becoming more of a burden. And with these increases in these budgets, with these increases in special education that are unregulated, what this does is it prevents us from it. We're not talking about quote-unquote cheaping out on the special education students, because again, that question has been answered. You must fund them to the fullest. The question is that if these increases go up without any regulation or without any subsidy from the state, any increased subsidy from the state, you can't necessarily invest for the future of your special education population or your general student population, because all of those funds are just being funneled into this sort of black monopolistic hole that you can't necessarily control. And it's really a two-pronged issue, and I actually agree with Mrs. Matson that an investigation should happen and that more people should actually speak up and ask questions about this, because this hurts the special education students when these things happen, because we can't get more things for them that would be extras to increase their quality of education. This also becomes an issue again within just the general district, and it creates more budgetary issues on what are we going to cut. So that is an important thing to sort of recognize. The other thing that's happening is that fixed costs are going up. People have to retire whether or not you like that. We pay for retirement. That's not really a choice that any of us have. Retirement costs went up 28%. Health insurance is just going to keep going up. And we are actually soliciting right now to get additional quotes on this, to get new quotes on this, because we are not happy with our general property insurance rates increasing by this much. But I want you to look. Fixed cost rates are making up 20.5% of the entire general budget, and about 24% of the general budget is from special education. When you have any increases like 3% or even 6.6% in two categories that basically almost make up what we're looking at is basically 44% of the budget right here, that's a significant problem, and that's actually contributing more than the teachers' salaries, more than the instruction funds costs, to the entire budget right now, because these are two very unregulated areas that really need to be evaluated. And again, we're also putting in all of our excess and deficiency funds, so that way we get buy-in from the towns of Templeton and Phillipston, so that way the towns of Templeton and Phillipston understand that we are trying to put all of our funds in where we can to help the students and to actually pay off for the budget, so that if we do have to do any increases this year, or if there's any extra payouts that they have to do this year or in the next following years, we do get general support from them, because right now if we don't do that, that is going to become a bigger problem. CARES 2 funding, without the CARES 2 funding, we wouldn't be able to offset some of these different issues. These are where the ESSER 2 grants are from. And one of the other things that I agree with, and right now what we're also doing in terms of the budget is we are trying to transition people out of some of our different school accounts, such as part of our health insurance and part of the salaries for the teachers are actually stuck in with the school choice amounts that we get coming in. And since, as you can see from this projection, those numbers are going down, and as those numbers are going down, this can actually create potentially within 2025 and 2026 the severe deficit that comes up. But this may actually come sooner, because right now with these parachutes, everyone's really concerned about what 2023 is going to look like, what will increase, what will probably not decrease, or what will probably not stabilize in terms of different costs of different items. And so that's really becoming a big issue. And I want to point out that Rayanne Trifolo, who is one of the people who I am technically competing against when it comes to the school committee, I wanted to point out that I did want to give her credit that she is sort of looking at this issue and saying that we really do have to get out of this situation and really look at the situation with the school committee, with the school choice reliance, the reliance on school choice monies, and in terms of school choice revenue coming in, revenue growth this year was only 1.66%. That's very poor. It would have been more had the coronavirus situation not happened. However, this is the situation that we are currently in. And so I'm just looking through really quick at and just to tell you how big the budget has increased. Last year the budget had increased by almost it was over 1%, which is what went to the towns last year, was a 1% increase in the entire budget to both towns. Not to both towns, but the entire budget had increased by over 1%. This year, the entire overall increased budget from FY21 is 2.61%. Most of that is being offset because of the ESSER 2 grants, but again, one-time parachute situation, what will this look like? Because we know this number is going to go up the next year. It's probably going to go up over 1% again in FY22. What does that look like? How do we deal with that? Will there be more relief? Will there be a different allocation of fundings? There's a lot of talk right now. What we really need is people who are willing to step up and challenge and create action for this. However, I have no idea what that's going to look like in the current climate. So that's just what I wanted to say. That is sort of the end of this video. There aren't really any, it's the budget. You can sort of look at it on your own and see those different meetings that are pointed out and sort of come with it on your own. I know this particular video was over 15 minutes, but I wanted to just also explain at the beginning what the purpose of these videos was for. And I hope that was informative. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing with this campaign or like what I'm doing with engaging with this audience and the townspeople. And I thank you.